Now, it did kind of creep me out when I got this magazine that said, "They know where I am." How did they know? And then I thought about it and realized, of course they know. I subscribe to the magazine, and with satellite imagery, they can show where it's being delivered. So while this shocked me at the time, the technology that's available now makes it much easier for companies to know lots of things about us. Google now offers street views where anyone can see what any address looks like. And when you use the internet to visit a website or buy something or plan a vacation, that information is available to all kinds of people. Does that invade your privacy? Here's a pitch from an online privacy company.
Imagine if people could just go through your house and collect whatever information they found from your files, desk, wallet, and medicine cabinet, then sell it online to anyone interested. That's basically what information brokers do, except they don't need to go through your house.
The company that made that video is Reputation.com. Michael Furtick is its CEO. His company makes money helping consumers keep their secrets secret. Adam Thierer of the Mercatus Center says we should chill out. He says sharing what some call secrets is actually useful. So, Adam, really, how is it useful?
Well, John, when you think about the internet, one of the great things about it is that it feels like the ultimate free lunch. We have all these wonderful sites and services, most of them free of charge to consumers. But of course, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Economists have been telling us that for decades. What powers the internet is advertising. Advertising that in turn is fueled by data collection, including data collection about us. So there's essentially sort of an implicit quid pro quo between internet consumers and online companies, which is we're going to share a little bit of information with them, and they're going to deliver a lot of free digital
we
goodies.
Get cool free stuff.
That's right.
So, Michael, sounds good to me. What's the problem with that?
The problem is that privacy policies of companies that take our data in exchange for the supposed free services are so complicated that
But let me stop you. What
like
do you mean
supposed
free services? They are free. Gmail
well,
is free.
They're not actually free in the sense that they are mining your very personal information in ways that aren't used just for advertising. They're also being used by insurance companies to determine whether you are insurable and what premiums to charge you.
All right, but let me before you would try to explain that, let me go to your video, which points out that internet information sharing allows insurance companies and prospective employers to dig up dirt on you. Here's that clip.
Tracking cookies map our every move online. Apps for smartphones and e-readers record our geographic moves and catalog what we watch. But even more alarming are the potential results from the combination of personal information and behavioral data by institutions like insurance providers, financial services, and employers.
Yeah, Adam, what about that?
Well, most of these things that are billed as harms in that video could also be turned around and seen as benefits in other ways. The information that flows to insurance companies may be used to help provide us lower premiums. It may be used to provide us with a better home board.
If they find out that I eat a lot of fast food or I go skydiving, it's a higher premium
and if they find out that you have a lot of speeding tickets, you may pay a little bit more in your insurance. That's the way information markets work. Without all of that, we would require going into a bank to get a loan and hope that the banker thought we were dressed nice that day or just thought we had an agreeable disposition. That's not the way information markets work today. We cross-reference information about individuals and come up with a portrait of them to help decide whether or not they're a good credit risk or they're a good insurance risk.
And so what allows the insurance company to charge the good driver less is knowing about the bad drivers.
That's right.
So, yeah, maybe you get caught, but other people benefit.
That's right.
Michael, you're arguing with that.
Well, look, there's a fallacy here. The truth is that if you have an informed actual choice to share information in exchange for some value, then that is a real and fair open exchange of information. But if you're actually just being used and abused without your knowledge, then you have no actual consent. You cannot actually be a party to the contract without your consent. That's a basic and fundamental part of American jurisprudence since before America was founded.
But I don't see how I'm being abused. I mean, I'm one of those internet users that isn't going to read all the... I get the privacy notice. I just click agree. I don't read it. I don't think most people have lives. They don't want to make all these decisions. I don't see how I'm abused if I get an ad that's tailored to my interests.
And I agree with you. You don't have time to read this stuff. You're just being taken advantage of without your knowledge. We've shown that 6 out of 7 times, with just a name and an email address, we can end up with someone's 9-digit social security number. And that's the kind of thing that worries me. And there's no way that you would know that as just a normal user of the internet without being informed about it and without, in my view, having the chance to be paid, actually paid
Adam, they
for
know
the
my
value of
social
the data that you
security
represent.
number. That's
Most of
creepy.
them actually don't. You can take steps to protect your privacy if you're concerned about it online. The #1 most downloaded tool for both the Firefox and Chrome web browsers online is AdBlock Plus, which can block all ads and all data collection if you don't like them. You can take matters into your own hands. It's called personal responsibility.
Not good enough, says my government. And this brings us to the boring but important part of our segment. The government, as usual, doesn't want to let the marketplace work this stuff out. The Obama administration has called for a privacy bill of rights. Drafts are being prepared by the unctuous Senator John Kerry. At the moment, his draft says companies may collect only as much covered information about an individual as is reasonably necessary to improve their services. Adam, sounds reasonable.
Well, you know, the last time I checked the actual Bill of Rights, John, it said that the first of those was the right to freedom of speech and that the government should generally keep its hands off these things. And that's what's really been great about the internet when you think about it. We've taken a hands-off-the-net approach. It's worked out pretty well. Other countries in Europe, they've taken a more heavy-handed approach. It hasn't worked out so well for them.
And you say one reason is because they have privacy rules.
I think it's because they have very heavy-handed command and control privacy directives that crush innovation in Europe.
John Kerry's
That's not
draft
true.
would
That's-
also create
that's
a
not true.
do-not-track mechanism requiring web surfers to actively opt in and consent to data collection, which, Michael, that seems to be what you're asking for.
There are so many reasons America's ahead of Europe. I can list a billion. But in terms of the regulation in particular, I'm most afraid about a step in the wrong direction, a feint in the direction of regulation that actually weakens American privacy. So I'm worried about a regulation of do not track, some version of do not track that's so weak that it actually doesn't protect Americans. What in fact it does, it gives Americans the sense that they're being protected, whereas in fact it actually does not protect them.
Thank you, Michael Furtick, Adam Thierer. We should continue this at another time. But when we return, if I own a gun, do you have a right to know that? Some states say yes. But what does that tell the crooks? That's next. Do you own a gun? You may say that's none of my business. But some states say it's everyone's business. Indiana, Tennessee, and Florida have already given newspapers the names of all licensed gun owners. They say it's public information. Some gun owners say, no, that's just going to tell the crooks they can come to my house and steal my gun. Or it's going to tell the crooks, rob somebody else's home because they don't have a gun. And now the controversy has moved to Illinois because this spring the state attorney general ordered state police to release the names of gun owners in that state. The Associated Press had filed a Freedom of Information request, and the attorney general said they're required to release public records upon request unless it would lead to harm. But of course it would lead to harm, says State Representative Ron Stevens, who wants to block the names from being released. No, people have a right to this information, says Charles Davis, a journalism professor at the University of Missouri. So, Charles, you first. Why does the public need to know?
For a couple of really simple reasons. One, there can be malfeasance and ineffectiveness in the licensing process itself. And two, there can be the possibility of corruption. And so it's a matter really of pure accountability. Without some way to check up on how government is granting the registry itself and how the registry itself is built, there's no way to know government's doing a very good job.
And government often does not do a very good job. And a number of these newspapers that got the records found they were giving licenses to felons and others who shouldn't have guns. So Representative Stevens seems reasonable.
Whether I own a gun or not is nobody's business, including the government and the press, period.
But it's licensed, it's a public record, and what if the government's giving license to the wrong people?
Well, first of all, I shouldn't have to submit an application to the government to have the right to then go buy a weapon. We do believe in background
most
checks.
states have some form of license.
They don't have an owner's ID card. I have to have an ID card or I can't have a weapon. Now,
and let me just break this down before you continue. This was news to me. 4 states don't have any registration requirements. Vermont, Alaska, Arizona, Wisconsin, though they ban concealed carry, no license. But most states have some form.
John, it's America. I have a right to a weapon. I have that. It's in our Constitution. Now, having said that, of course we believe in reasonable constraints, background checks. Before you go to buy a weapon, we believe in a waiting period. I don't have a problem with that. But I don't want the Attorney General to tell our state police that we have to publish this list, and now she says, well, we'll just put the names out there, not the addresses. Really?
And explain the harm in your mind.
The harm in my mind is if you publish that list of 1.3 million people, who knows what harm can come? A lot of information that is nobody's business but mine all of a sudden becomes known to my neighbors.
And Charles, the New York Times got the names of all New York City gun owners and published a number of them, including Sean Hannity, who's working upstairs at the moment, and my boss, Roger Ailes. Doesn't that invade their privacy?
No, what we're talking about is information policy. And where public records are compiled by government agencies and where exemptions do not exist in the statutes to close them, those records should be and should continue, in my argument, to be public. The reason for that is quite simple, and I think gun-owning people, I think this is a pretty compelling argument. We have to be able to watch the people who are watching us. Without access to government information, every time government says, we're going to protect your privacy by bottling up some more information, let's not forget what we are doing is transferring our sovereign right to that information to our government.
Ron?
You know, we spend so much of our government's time taking care of law-abiding citizens and watching over them. I think all of this energy would be better spent if we would put our police activities in going after criminals, not the 1.3 million people that step forward in Illinois and have fire owners' ID cards.
Some gun owners have said, you know, they're going to come and take my guns away. I don't trust the government. And I thought that seemed a little extreme. But then I learned that after Katrina, after the hurricane, the superintendent of police announced no one is allowed to be armed. We're going to take all the guns. And Mayor Nagin and the National Guard and U.S. Marshals broke into homes at gunpoint, confiscating lawfully owned firearms. Well, let me ask Charles, what's your reaction to that? It's a reason to keep it private if you own a gun.
It's not an easy issue. I just hammer away at the point that the solution to so many of our problems is not secrecy. Secrecy compounds matters. It seldom makes them better.
And that's what our show is about, that debate, privacy versus secrecy. Thank you, Representative Stevens and Charles Davis. Next.
When a police officer gets in your face, don't you have a right to take a picture of that? I'd think that would be good protection against police brutality. It was news to me that in some states, you may get arrested for videotaping this. That's next.